Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Sanabria, host of the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast, and I'm here to host another installment of SC Media's InFocus. These interviews feature some of the top thought leaders in the cybersecurity space. This is an opportunity for these experts to share hindsight on recent events and foresight on where you should be focused as a cybersecurity professional in the near future. Today, we'll be discussing some insights around how business is going for Semperis, the state of Active Directory security, Semperis's partnerships, and finally, what lies in the future for the company. Joining me today is Mickey Bresman, CEO at Semperis. How are you doing, Mickey?
Hey, Adrian, good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Excited to be chatting with you today. And I think we're going to kick off with Semperis has hit some milestones here, some very exciting milestones. In fact, I was thinking about this and I don't have the actual stats, but I want to say like 95% of security startups don't hit the milestone that you just hit.
Yeah, based on the milestone that you're referring to, I assume is the 100 million in
Yeah.
annual recurrent revenues. I read different stats as well. From what I've seen, it's definitely very uncommon. So I think the quotes are somewhere between zero point 0.1 to 0.2% of all companies.
Oh, that's small.
Yeah, it,
Okay.
it, it's really, really small. So definitely very exciting milestone to hit for us.
Yeah, and it's it used to be, things have shifted somewhat. Not that, I personally have opinions on whether or not security companies should go public. But that used to be the milestone for, okay, you can IPO now. Like 100 million ARR and revenue was kind of like that hill that you had to crest. And these days I'm hearing more like 200, 250, something like that. But it's a different conversation. I'm not sure security companies should go public, but yeah,
I, I
having the
think
option there is nice.
Yeah, exactly. I think having the option is really that's like eventually one you want to have. You want to have the options to decide what's the right thing for you. And the way that I think somebody described it to me now, the 100 million mark is when the company becomes a real company. That's I think is how people
Yeah,
think about it.
yeah. Maybe some other measures of the size of the company, like what does a customer landscape look like these days?
Sure. So we have roughly a bit less than 1,000 customers worldwide. If you recall from our previous conversations, Semperis operates across the globe. So we have the majority of our presence is in North America, but we also have operations across Europe and across APAC as well. We don't have any one specific industry. As you mentioned before, Active Directory is something that is common across multiple companies with no specific one vertical or the other. I think according to most, Gartner research and Microsoft and others, about 90% of the companies out there rely on Active Directory as their main identity store. And in the Semperis portfolio of customers, you will find about half of the Fortune 10, which I think is quite an impressive milestone for us as well. But across pretty much every vertical, if it's healthcare, finance, retailer, you will find the biggest names in the industry leveraging Semperis. And what's more interesting, that is also what we're seeing across the globe as well. So if it's the, like Fortune 1 in the North America side of the house and the biggest telco in Australia, or multiple examples of that sort.
Yeah. Yeah, and I imagine so you've got a number of investors at this point. I think we wanted to touch on some of those partnerships and how those have helped the company through the years.
Sure. So could not be more proud of the people that are backing up the company. We have investors like KKR, which is one of the biggest private public equity. They're a private equity provider, but they're publicly traded. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
So super excited about them. They're one of the most known names in the cybersecurity space and obviously other spaces as well. But then also ones like Insight Partners, which is one of the biggest private equities as well, with huge names behind them and mutual success stories in the cybersecurity space. So they definitely understand the space really, really well. And then others like Atrium Health, which actually first became a customer and only then became an investor in a later stage. I'm very excited about that partnership because one of the reasons that they invest in companies is not a financial one. I mean, they do have a financial requirements as well, but they invest in companies that can prepare the entire healthcare industry as a whole. So we'll only invest if they think that. And for Semperis, indeed, the healthcare vertical was our biggest always, just because they're being attacked so much and they have so much to lose. And then there are others like 1011 and Paladin, both are household names in the cybersecurity space. But I think what even more exciting is the type of advisors that we have that have joined the company over the years. I'll just mention three, but we have much more than that. One is obviously General David Petraeus, used to be the head of CIA and so many different accomplishments that I will not be able to mention in several sentences, but he understands cybersecurity probably better than most of the leaders in the space that I ever met, and I could not be more excited about the partnership with him. Chris Ingalls, who was the Cyber National Director for the Biden administration. He was the Deputy NSA. Also, I don't think that there is anything more that need to be added, but one of the smartest people that I ever met for sure. Malcolm Turnbull, who on the other side of the globe was the ex-Prime Minister of Australia, 2018, with a lot of initiatives in the cybersecurity space as well. And there are others, obviously, but we're not going to go through the entire list. But why I'm so excited about them is because they're really helping Semperis to think about where do we want to take things, how do we want to consider what the future should look like, what are the more important things that we should and should not be doing, and they all have a view that can be applied globally to the different countries, and especially when it comes to geotensions. So very happy to have them helping.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to have when you're hitting this revenue mark, to have broad perspectives, to have customers, in different sizes in different industries and things like that. Because as you alluded to, Active Directory is everywhere, right? And with Active Directory everywhere, I think the question, when I was preparing for this, that pops into my head is, like, this has been the number one target, I feel like, of pen testers, and getting domain admin is almost a meme, right? Like it's almost a joke. Like how quick do you get domain admin? I got it in 5 minutes. Oh, I got it in 3 minutes. And of course, targeted by attackers and cyber criminals as well. So, like, how are we looking at this point? Like, Active Directory is still everywhere. It hasn't gone away. Even if we call it Entra ID, components of it Entra ID today. Are we any better at defending it? Obviously that's what you guys are focused on. So I think it's interesting from your perspective, like, I guess, what's the potential? Like, can it be much better protected and people just aren't doing that?
So I 100% agree with you that things, that AD is a main target. It's been there for a very long period of time. And in fact, there was a report that was released by the Five Eyes not that long ago that explicitly called out for security of the Active Directory. Can things be done better? Obviously, yes. And that's the mission on which Semperis is on. Now, our assumption is that we don't want to think just about how do we prevent you from becoming a domain admin. And don't get me wrong, it is a big focus of ours. But we also want to assume that unfortunately, there is a good chance that you might be successful, because it's not necessarily because of a weakness in the Active Directory. It might be a phishing attack that was successful.
Yeah.
It might be a social.
Stolen creds. Yeah.
Exactly. You might have convinced the AD admin just to give you the creds, which sometimes unfortunately happens. So our assumption is that let's assume that you already have those as a bad actor. What do we do about it? How do we make sure that this does not mean that that's game over for the enterprise, which, to your point from before, what I assume you mean is that typically meant game over, meaning as soon as I have domain admin, I now can do whatever I want in the environment, including taking it completely down. And Semperis have an offering for customers where we basically covered the entire cycle from the pre-attack to the during and to the post, which basically guarantees to our customers that even if the bad actor got the domain admin and they even took AD down, it's not a game over because we have the ability to recover the environment back to operational state, and we can do it in a matter of minutes and up to hours. We also can make sure that we help the customer to get rid of the bad actor that got the domain admin in the environment. And that is actually a combination of best of breed products, but also the services arm that we have. And that part is led by Todd Weber, who used to be the CTO of Optiv and actually was with one of our investors. He was with 1011 before he decided to join us and help us to build this practice. But one of the things that we always tell customers is that, number one, don't panic. We've been there before. We know how to deal with it. And we will make sure that the fact that Adrian got a domain admin is not going to mean that you're out of business. So that's our main message to customers. Definitely can be done better.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, if you look at like the NIST CSF framework, you guys are kind of covering, all five, or I guess they now have six. They included governance now, but the identification, protection, detection, response, recovery, all that for AD.
100%. And we try to simplify it. So my general thinking is more of pre-attack, during the attack, post-attack. But you're absolutely right, because there is a lot of debate in our industry. And there is a whole segment called ITDR, Identify, Detection, and Response. And there is a whole debate of what should actually be included under ITDR. One of the things that we raised up as a concern is that by default, the industry will assume that the R in ITDR stops with the response, meaning I have seen that
Right.
an account has been compromised, and now I want to go and maybe disable that account, and that's pretty much what my response would look like. And in Semperis, we came in, we said that does not make too much sense to us, because what it now means is that when an organization thinks about an ITDR kind of a solution, they will not be thinking about what happens if that did not stop the adversary. Meaning, yes, I disabled the account, but the adversary had 20 other accounts, and they still were able to encrypt the environment. So one of the things that we have been raising the concern about in the industry and advocating for is the need to have recovery as part of that as well. So it will not become game over in case your AD have been fully compromised.
And I think a misconception is that these things happen perfectly in that order, isolated from one another. And in a lot of cases, like business continuity is important. You're doing recovery the entire time, right? Post incident, post breach. And you're probably doing some prevention stuff because you don't want them to come back in the same way that they got in the first time. So a lot of this is happening like layered at the same time.
You touch on so many important points right now in a single sentence. I love it. The first one, yes, the recovery by itself is not going to be enough. In addition to the recovery, you need to make sure that you close the gaps. So you don't allow the bad actors to continue and have a hold of the environment, and you make sure that they cannot just get back exactly the same way that they got there from the beginning. But maybe even more importantly, what you have is with the pre, during, and post, and in our case, we do it as a cycle, is that whatever our incident response team have learned at the post when they were dealing with the breach and they were dealing with the recovery post of the incident, actually will now make its way to the pre in the product so that we will basically have a better way to prevent whatever methods that were used by the bad actors during that stage.
Yeah. Let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about some of your company's partnerships, recent partnerships. I understand there's some significant ones there.
Sure. So we have announced several of those, and there are more that will be announced during 2025. But some of the ones that immediately come to mind is a partnership that we announced with Cohesity and Veritas. Interestingly enough, we had this partnership in place with both companies before they merged to become a single entity. The core of that partnership is that you take the best of breed when it comes to the AD recovery world, and you combine it with the best of breed Cohesity, being that backup and recovery solution for everything else. And you basically combine it into a single recovery process where the recovery process can start directly from the Cohesity system that have the best of breed in terms of the offline offsite policies and everything else that they do. And they have the ability to start the recovery immediately by leveraging Semperis for the AD side. On the other side of it is the fact that we have created a dedicated solution that allows organizations to understand who actually have access to the Cohesity system. So an attack path analysis tool, but not for identity, attack path analysis tool for backup and recovery solution, in this case, Cohesity and Veritas, so that you can reduce the attack surface, which we know that the bad actor will try to leverage. Because if they can encrypt the backup and recovery solution before encrypting the rest of the production environment, the recovery process becomes a nightmare. So this is just one example of the things that we've been working on.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of good stuff. Yeah. And necessary, right? Like you guys can't do everything. You've got to partner with some other organizations to do some of this. So what's next for Semperis?
That's a very good question. I think what you will see coming out from us next year or during 2025, which have already started, what you will see from us is basically definitely additional partnerships, but then you will also see expansion in terms of with the offerings that we have, specifically expanding more into covering both the during the attack stage, but then also the different cloud exposures that we're seeing. And there is a lot to cover in that space. And then one of the things that we're really pushing out now, we came out with a SaaS offering that is specifically focused on the SME, SMB side of companies, because we feel, and this is not new, but that market is underserved. So we feel that by giving them the ability to leverage a SaaS offering in that space will allow us to support the unique needs that they have.
Yeah, and that means different sales channels as well, right? You got to kind of expand into, you can't spend the same amount of time selling for every single SMB out there. It's a different strategy altogether.
It's more than that, and you're 100% right. The main focus that we have there is going to be through MSSPs. So in most cases, the customer is already being managed, and now we want to basically empower the partners that we have that in most cases have an MSSP business to go and serve those customers as well.
Yeah, good stuff. And with that, we've been talking to Mickey Bresman from Semperis. Mickey, thank you for being in focus with us today.
Thank you, Adrian. Good seeing you.